This episode is brought to you by Trello, which is trusted by millions of brave souls around the world to help them keep track of all their projects and to-dos. Trello is the easy, free, flexible, and visual way to manage your projects and organize anything. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life, so if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Kye Alfred Hillig is today's featured guest on the show. Kye, like me, is a Washington-based singer-songwriter. However, he's way ahead of me when we're defining the word prolific. He has written over 1,400 songs and recorded over 21 albums, all of them genre-hopping and continuously evolving over time. Kye has released 5 solo albums since 2012, and he would like me to communicate to you he does not believe in the devil. But I would like to communicate to you he does believe in some pretty transcendental light and darkness. We get to talk about that today. Kye and I are friends in real life, which is how I know that. I know you'll love what he has to say about art and songwriting today, and the way he approaches making music and how he facilitates the experience of listening to it. It's all pretty endearing, in a somewhat dark, independent film kind of way. His songs are definitely not the big Hollywood kind of songs, and that is one of the reasons why I sincerely love all of it. Since Kye and I know each other in real life, I thought it'd be a cool thing to flip the script a little and have him ask me a couple questions too. This was a spontaneous idea, so you'll have to let me know how it goes. But it was such a great trigger for conversation that he and I kept the conversation going beyond what you and I know to be a reasonable length of an episode. So what you'll hear today is part 1 of a 2-part conversation with my friend and singer-songwriter Kye Alfred Hillig. As a side note, if you don't consider yourself an artist or a songwriter, please keep listening to this conversation. I promise you will get a ton out of it. I promise. As with any creative process, there's a significant overlap for any person, regardless of what they quote unquote do or what their opinions are. So enjoy this episode and apply it to your own life. Okay, you ready for some bare naked bravery?
Yes.
Let's do. He's unbuttoning his shirt.
I'm sorry, is that what this podcast is about? I misunderstood.
I mean, you could be shirtless, but I'm going to keep my clothes on.
No, it'll get weird.
It would get weird. Real weird. Real fast. Okay, I'm so glad that you are here. So I was at your show this weekend,
Hmm.
house show, and I was reminded how vulnerable your songs are
Yeah.
in a very unapologetic way, like unapologetically vulnerable.
Yeah.
You also have this knack for morose hope,
Yeah, that's a nice word for it.
and I love it.
Yeah, to me, it's called reality. But, other people might view life differently. I'm definitely not Winnie the Pooh, but I don't think I'm a bummer either. Hopefully I'm not a bummer.
Oh no, you're not a bummer. I think in your shows, you definitely, in the banter between songs, you definitely identify the fact that you're not a depressed dude.
Yeah, I've had a couple interviews recently where that seems to be a topic of conversation. And I don't know, I don't see myself that way at all. So it's really hard for me to identify as I'm doing good. I don't
Oh yeah.
I'm not bummed out.
And we're friends, so I know that this is the case.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do think that's really funny that when we, as artists and musicians, songwriters, when we play shows and, like, for lack of a better word, because we are on the Bare Naked Bravery show,
Mm.
when we bare it all or whatever we're trying to reveal, when we reveal something unabashedly to an audience, there's a certain kind of reaction, or there's a certain set of reactions that we are susceptible to.
Sure.
What have been some of those responses that you've experienced?
Well, especially with the stuff that I've had around the time that I had that record, The Buddhist, that I made, you played some of those shows with me, but those songs were so much that way. They were so much down the vulnerable road that there was two reactions. One, I didn't know any of it was funny. And then when I was playing some of the shows and people would laugh, I didn't realize that it was funny, which it didn't upset me, but I just didn't expect that. And then the other thing is just people get really squirmy. I definitely noticed that because there's kind of, I think a lot of times an implicit understanding with audiences and performers that they're going to be catered to or they're going to be coddled in some way. I think that a lot of times even American movies kind of set people up for this kind of a dynamic. I'm going to make you feel comfortable. Come into my arms where everything is resolved. And I don't like that. To me, it doesn't seem like the job is well done unless you've cut into someone. If you haven't cut into them, you've wasted their time, in my opinion. Because I think that's the job of a songwriter, is to rip you apart. And if you're not ripped apart at the end of it, then I don't think you've had the experience you were supposed to have.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know how Facebook will remind you of things that happened in previous years. And this morning, one of the reminders was that I had just finished a song, and my roommates at the time all had these really extreme responses.
Mm-hmm.
And in Facebook, I was even identifying the same thing, that, like, it's a good song when someone reacts in an extreme way. And in that case, it was a positive way, but the negative responses are also a symptom of success as well, to that cutting into somebody.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't know the full effect that something has until I play it in front of people. Like there's ones that I didn't think were notable at all, that once I played them in front of people, I was like, oh, there's some shit there. If I play this, there will be this response in general.
Like which songs are you talking about?
Like I didn't know that Together Through It All or Trapdoor, I didn't know either of those were good songs. I just thought they were fine. And it wasn't until I started like playing them that people would, that's their subjects of conversation when I play them at shows. Yeah. Like people come up to me afterwards and be like, I liked the one with the whatever. And I'll be like, oh, okay. So I kind of know that people like them, but I didn't know on the front end.
Yeah. The feedback loop that we have after the bravery or after being vulnerable is you have a really good, steady feedback loop, I think, going. You release an album pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have a good habit of going to open mics and trying things out.
Yeah, I haven't done any of that for a while, but only because I only go to do open mics and things like that if I start, not doing shows. Most of the time, I don't book shows. Like, I don't set out to do shows. I get asked to do the majority of them because I don't like asking. I don't like asking to do shows because it feels like it sets up this dynamic where all of a sudden there's less respect there or something. Like, if I set up a show, then it's like, okay, well, we're doing you a favor. Now come show us what you got. And for me, I just would rather not have that in place. So if I go a couple months without playing, fine by me. And if I need to be satiated in the meantime, then that's when I go and do like open mics and stuff like that. Yeah. And I like to not tell people I'm going to do it. I don't want an audience that knows me when I go to do that, because if I'm trying out new stuff or want to play old stuff, I want there to be a clean slate to see what the genuine response is, instead of people who are like, oh, I know this one, or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, you don't want a biased response.
Mm-hmm.
You want the real reaction to the actual piece of work that you've done, not the person who did it.
Yeah, I like the fresh canvas, so to speak, without people having any experience. That's one of the things I like about touring and stuff too, is like a lot of times I'm playing in front of people who maybe have never seen me live before and have a little reference point. And so I get to kind of like try to bring them into the fold somehow. And that feels really good.
You have a day job.
Mm-hmm.
How does your day job influence the art that you create, the songs that you write?
I don't know. I think a lot of it, I'm a social worker now and kind of have leaned that way for a while as far as the work I do.
Before that, you were doing biohazard cleanup.
Yeah, trauma cleanup.
Which is heart-wrenching. And then you also worked at a funeral home as well.
Yeah, I worked at a funeral home for 4 years. And I also worked at Rainier State School for a period of time, which is essentially like an institution for mostly like DD folks, but also for, people with autism. And towards the end of my time there, they were starting to integrate in mental health, which was really not a good idea. When you have a system set up for DD folks and then you start kind of integrating mental health people, they're two totally different worlds.
Oh my gosh.
So it was not, anyway, whatever, that doesn't matter. But yeah, so I did that for a while too.
So first of all of those jobs are jobs that people would not choose.
Some people. Yeah.
Some people, this is true.
Yeah.
Why did you choose them?
So it all started with the trauma cleanup job. I was working in a high rise in downtown Seattle as a barista, and I hadn't been a barista for several years. And I was fired within like less than 2 weeks. Before I could even collect a paycheck, they fired me.
Can I ask why?
They said I wasn't keeping up. I wasn't like pulling my weight. And it had been a long time, and it was very fast paced. It's a bunch of people in suits that want to already be at work. I hadn't done it in years, so I didn't have what it took to hold up my end. But, whatever. I didn't enjoy that work anyway. So I was kind of adrift for a period of months, and I saw an ad on like Craigslist or something for restoring burnt furniture in a warehouse. And I thought, that sounds interesting. So I went to apply for that job. It was a disaster restoration company, is kind of the umbrella that it falls under. And they said, well, that position has been filled, but, we also have flood.
They pulled a car salesman trick on you?
Kind of. Well, I don't know. I don't know exactly, but they were kind of going down the list of different possibilities of jobs that you could do there. And they very casually mentioned trauma cleanup. And I just went, one more time, say that again. So I said, well, I want to do that. That sounds interesting. And I think the reason why I did that is because I wanted to see what it was made of. Like you kind of get this picture in your mind of what this would entail. You see movies where people are, eviscerated somehow, or you've seen some horrible video on the internet of someone getting hit by a train or whatever the thing is. And it all feels so gross and disturbing and evil or heavy. And so I wanted to see the reality instead of the fiction that is kind of spun. A lot of my job choices have been kind of investigatory looks into, it sounds stupid, so like looks into the abyss.
It doesn't sound stupid at all.
I want to see the other side, because what you get in general is a lot of bullshit. You get a lot of Disneyland. You get a lot of manicured lawn. You get a lot of this kind of stuff. And I get that, and that's fine, and that has its own appeal, but that's one side of a coin, and I wanted the other side because, not to get too metaphysical, but there's this duality, right? And all of us are made up of these things, this light and the darkness and all this stuff. And the truth is in the middle. And I felt like our modern world, at least in America, in my experience, being a white male, middle class, was manicured lawns and fucking Disneyland, right? Which is not to say my life is without hardship, but just comparatively. And so I wanted to see the other side of it to know what the truth is, to try to get a complete picture of the world. And so starting to do the trauma stuff was beginning a journey into the other side of things. And I'm sure that all of this has affected my work with music, but some of my friends that I've known for decades now will tell you that I was already bent that way.
I mean, I totally believe that.
Yeah.
There's no way it would be otherwise. Putting together a podcast was a crazy idea I've had for a long while. One of the reasons I put it off so long was all the details, scheduling, to-dos, emailing, and editing processes required to publish a single podcast episode. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And Trello might be the single reason why you're listening to this podcast right now. It helped me set up a simple way to visualize the production process of every episode. And I'm a visual learner, so spreadsheets don't always do the trick with me. Trello will help you manage any project you've got going on. Family grocery lists, working with your assistant, brainstorming ideas, collaborating on that film project, or researching that ant farm hobby. Trello is simple on the surface, but has everything you need to get stuff done. Post comments for instant feedback, upload files from your computer, Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, add checklists, labels, due dates, and so much more. And the notifications make sure you always know when important stuff happens. It's free, and you can sign up by going to barenakedbravery.com/Trello. TRELLO. So your definition of that truth being like the place where light and dark meet is quite possibly one of the most succinct and best ways to describe that. So good on you.
Oh,
congratulations.
Thank you. I'll hang that on the wall.
When you attempt to write a piece of music or song, is that in your mind of trying to find that place where it blends?
No, but I definitely feel the balance beam. I mean, there's a line and the truth is in the middle, right? So if I write a song that's too happy, it's bullshit. And if I write a song that's too sad, it's bullshit, right? So if I write a love song, it has to have a blemish. It has to have a fleck. Otherwise, it doesn't reflect the truth. If I write a dark song and I don't put any light into it, what you have is goth music, and no one believes that shit if you're not 14. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so it's too dramatic, it's souped up, and it won't resonate in the same way with anybody who's not in head-to-toe Hot Topic garb. I detest kind of the implication of being gothic. I've had some people kind of parallel me to like the Smiths or something like this, and I don't take to that at all. I had a friend once, years and years ago, who played in a band with me, and he was wearing black on one day. I just, was wearing black for whatever reason. It wasn't as a reflecting my inner person or something. And he called me gothic. And before I could even think about my reaction, I slapped him across the face, open hand slapped him. And it was a knee-jerk response. And then I felt horrible because I struck my friend. But yeah, so I didn't realize that I was going to respond that way, but I did.
I'm losing it. I'm just picturing it.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It probably didn't help our friendship.
You have really long fingers. That must have really hurt.
It's a big hand. Yeah, it's a big hand. And he didn't deserve it. He was just being playful, but it just happened to hit some chord in me where I was like, son of a bitch, got to learn, like.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so let's talk about that. What do you do when a song is too much on the other side?
I don't overthink it. I think it's just a sensibility. Like if I'm making something, it just naturally will start to lean that way, or I'll just kind of steer the ship slightly to the left or whatever. Part of my issue currently with some of the work that I've been making is that it goes too much to the negative. And I think that is because of the kind of current political climate and all this kind of thing. It feels like the apocalypse. I don't know how else to say that. It feels horrible, and it's been very disruptive to me on a deep level, which is, I've never been someone to be as involved in politics as I have been recently, or to care as much, because I've always just thought, the machine just keeps turning and it doesn't really matter what I do. And I think a lot of the stuff I've been doing recently goes too far into the dark shit. And so I haven't enjoyed it. I haven't liked the majority of my work I've been making lately, because it just seems like one big sob or something, it's just stupid. So it'll come back around. I like some of it. So.
Well, I can't wait to hear it first. Second, when you're taking the song that is too much of one thing or another, let's say it's too morose and not enough of the hope.
Yeah.
What are your tricks for, not tricks, that really trivializes it, and I apologize.
No, I don't care. It's fine.
What are some of the ways that you lean back towards hope?
I kind of am of the mind of, when I'm writing, first thought, best thought, but then sometimes that's not the case. So if I write something and it feels, as I when I go back over it, it feels too much like it's a gargoyle perched on a tombstone, then I will find a better and realer way to say something. A lot of times I find if I just open my mind and try to say something the way that it is, if I try to tell something the way that I see it, it will naturally find that balance. If I wax poetic, then I hate it. The closer that I can go to just flat out saying the thing that feels like the truth, and the more I lean away from roses and skulls on pianos and all this bullshit that people buy into about poetry, the closer I feel like I get to something that's actually human.
I just had a flash of you in a dark room sitting in front of a piano with roses and skulls.
Yeah,
that's made my day.
I'm going to be directing a Marilyn Manson music video that's incredibly close to that. Yeah.
Please do it.
With his missing ribs atop the keys,
Finding that balance between light and dark is a constant facet of my life. And I so deeply resonated with Kye's description of what truth is, and leaning back towards hope from a place of darkness might just be my new life mission statement. Kye and I go a little bit deeper into all of that next week in part 2 of our conversation with him. We started off by flipping the script of this interviewee episode format, and he will ask me a couple questions to kick us off into the story behind why I've done things a little differently, and what it's like to have your pacifier ripped from your grasp, and why you need community and a safe environment to find truth. The whole thing is so good, and I can't wait for you to hear it. For now, your brave takeaway from part 1 is simply answering for yourself the following questions. How are you finding truth with a capital T in your own creations? Life, work, career, vocation, relationships, legacy, art making, baby making, all of it are actions of creation. How are you finding the truth in it? Is there a balance of that light and dark? Should there be? If so, how can we readjust our balance of that light and darkness? And that's our show this week. Thank you for listening again. We have put all the links in the show notes for today's episode, so go ahead and just visit barenakedbravery.com to get all those. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it for you, then please give us a review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app. In fact, here's one of my favorite reviews left recently. So Check's Sidekick from the US says, Emily mentions she's a musician, and if she wrote and performed the podcast music, this girl's got talent. Very unique show. I usually stick with business podcasts, but this show proves that I need to broaden my playlist. Awesome. I love hearing this kind of stuff. This is so fantastic. And to answer your question, I am not the musician behind all of the music on this podcast. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to showcase all the awesome musicians that are represented by Music Box Licensing. So if you're interested in who are these musicians, you can go visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors and you will just love it all. I am so looking forward to being with you next week. We have some awesome things in store for you. But until then, as always, I have one message for you. It is this: be yourself. Be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.